Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down the two post-credits scenes shown at the end of Antman and the Wasp Quantumania. As is always the case with Marvel movies, the audience is treated to a tease of the future if they hang around until the end, and there's a lot to talk about as we go into Phase 5. If you enjoy the video, please hit the thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe to the channel to join the council of Kangsters that the Heavy Spoilers Show now is. With out of the way, huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into the post-credit scene. The first one I want to talk about is actually the second stinger that we get in the movie. This is taken from Loki Season 2, and it gives us a fair idea of what the upcoming show is going to be about. Marvel have done this sort of thing a couple of times before, and No Way Home of course ended with a trailer for Multiverse of Madness. If we go back to the first Antman movie, that even ended with a scene from Civil War, so they're very much keeping up tradition here. Now Loki Season 1 of course ended with the reveal that the variants of Nathaniel Richards were now unleashed across the multiverse. For the scene from Season 2, we catch Loki and Mobius in a theatre during what I think's the early 20th century. Judging by the clothing here, it looks like this is set between then and roughly the 1920s. Either way, it's clear that this season will be doing lots of time travel. It's how we at the channel make videos so fast, and they're likely using it to track down variants of Kang across the entire multiverse. Season 1 was about chasing down a Loki variant, and I like how this theme's carried across to the second season. Now the variant we catch here is Victor Timely, and this in itself is an Easter egg. Timely is well to do with time, but before Marvel became Marvel, it was actually a company called Timely Comics that was founded in 1939. The name then changed to Atlas Comics, and it was during the 60s that it finally became Marvel. Still though, you can't forget where you came from, and the creators gave this name to Kang as a kind of meta joke for comic readers. Now in the story, Kang ended up suffering a humiliating defeat, and he travelled back to 1901, which is where he created the town Timely. Under the name Victor Timely, he established a community there, and not only did he become the mayor, but he also founded Timely Industries. This had a range of factories, mines, and places that provided him a small fortune. He of course also used his knowledge of future technology to create highly advanced things that shouldn't have existed back in the era. Marvel actually retconned the origin story for the original Human Torch, who was an android instead of being the Johnny Storm we know and love. I'm sure I recognize him from somewhere, but yeah, this guy wasn't the original Human Torch. Now Marvel actually did an Easter egg for this all the way back in the first Captain America movie, and at the expo we could catch a play on the original Human Torch in a tank. Chris Evans of course played the character, and like I tell you every week, it's all connected. Anyway, Timely also created several of the androids, including ones of himself, so he could disappear for some time and do things without rousing suspicion. Now not really aging would of course also raise some eyebrows, and just in the same way that Kingo had to keep faking his death, Victor Timely also had to die too. Kang then became Victor Timely Jr., and he continued the actions under his new name. Now in this scene he has his classic mustache, and Loki instantly recognizes him and looks absolutely terrified. Mobius finds him a bit laughable though, and it very much cements this unassuming figure that we saw with He Who Remains. I think this hints at the season's basically going to be a sort of buddy cop team up thing where they're going timeline to timeline and finding all different kinds of Kangs. I was talking to Canadian lad about the scene, and he said he thinks Loki will be trying to find the version that becomes He Who Remains, which I think is such a cool idea. I don't want to just run off with the guy's theory, as I'm sure he's making a video on it, so definitely check his out if you haven't seen it. It's a pretty cool concept, and what I love about the idea of Kang is that you never know what you're gonna get. You could get a humorous magician, or come across a version that's an evil conqueror. There's also the fact that there are multiple versions of Kang that have already formed his council, and that takes us into the first post-credit scene we see. Now in it we see different versions of the character collected together, and we catch them discussing how the Kang exile has been killed. This is the version that we meet in Quantumania, and though there is the possibility that he's still alive, they at the very least believe that he's dead. He may have been Darren crossed into a smaller part of the quantum realm, but either way, it shows that not all Kangs are created equal, and that some are more important and dangerous than others. The council has 3 key members who we'll discuss in just a bit, but they vow to stop the heroes who've started to meddle with the multiverse. They say they could destroy everything they've built, and this is of course referring to the interconnected timelines that now exist across all reality. He Who Remains kept things simple and contained it all to one timeline because he knew things would eventually evolve into a giant multiversal war. Thus he started pruning timelines until all that was left was the Sacred One that we see appearing in the first season of Loki. Variants that created Nexus points were pruned, but his death nullified his master plan, and now the other Kangs all rule over everything. The Kangs then call for support from the others, and we see that there's a giant arena of them, including a Skrull version. This shot looks similar to their first appearance in Avengers 292, in which we got an angle similar to this. There are some that warp in using the same teleportation that Reed Richards had in the Multiverse of Madness, and the character is of course a descendant of him. And the main variants leading the council are Immortus, Ramatut, and someone who, according to the reports, is the Scarlet Centurion. They do look slightly different, but that's what the leaks on the scene said, and as they were pretty accurate, we'll just go with that. If you cast your mind back to Moon Knight, you might also remember that there was a Ramatut Easter egg in that, and as I've been saying, it's all connected. In the comics, we actually had something known as the Trio of Kangs, and this group clearly represent that. Now, Immortus is one of the most important versions of Kang, and He Who Remains was altered to look more in line with him. Originally in the comics, He Who Remains was an elderly being that ended up being the last leader of the TVA. He would stay at the end of a timeline before things started up again, and he'd leave behind information so that the next ones could start things up. This cycle went on for trillions and trillions of years, and it was very much a natural part of the universe. In the MCU, he's also the leader of the TVA, but with him being a Kang variant, he has ties to the character too. He Who Remains wore long purple robes like how Immortus does, and purple's actually a colour that's associated with royalty. Back in the olden days, a bit of a trivia tangent. It was hard to dye clothes that colour, and therefore only the rich could afford the colour purple. Anyway, Immortus is actually one of the oldest versions of Kang, and most that live long enough to reach that point usually end up becoming him. Immortus is a sort of anti-hero who's even fought alongside the Avengers at points, and a lot of time he finds his younger self a bit cringy. Imagine going back in time and reading a Facebook post from 10 years ago, or watching an old video where you came up with trivia tangent. You'd just find it embarrassing and you'd cringe a bit watching it back. Now in the comics, Immortus and Kang have been locked in an almost everlasting battle, and this is actually played out in the Avengers Forever storyline. Immortus being here could hint at the way things are going, and we'll give our theories on that in just a bit. And the next character I want to talk about is Ramatut. When Nathaniel Richards first travelled through time, he actually went back to ancient Egypt, which is where he donned the mantle of a pharaoh. Travelling through the time stream on a giant sphinx, he became a ferocious ruler due to his knowledge of technology and science. We actually got a nod to this vessel in Loki episode 5, as we did see a sphinx with its nose intact, which looked identical to Kang's. It's possible that the Void here actually had several remnants belonging to pruned timelines involving Kang, which is why we saw the King building and the yellow jacket helmet. He of course ended up becoming MODOK, and it may tie back to that episode in Loki. Anyway, Ramatut was defeated by the Fantastic Four, who were displaced in time, and this was one of Kang's first major defeats. We of course know a Fantastic Four film is coming, and potentially they might have Ramatut as the antagonist in that, tying this all together. Now lastly is the Scarlet Centurion, who kinda builds off the back of Ramatut. In the comics, Kang ended up being beaten by the Fantastic Four, and he then travelled to the 20th century, which is where he came across Doctor Doom. Believing they were relatives, they started to work together, and Kang became the Scarlet Centurion. He created armour based on Doom's designs, and they may end up bringing this into the MCU. Doom hasn't been introduced yet, but they could very much have Kang somewhat creating the character after meeting him, and forging a path for him to become a supervillain. The Centurion was beaten by the Avengers, and after this defeat, he aimed to travel to the 31st century. He overshot though, and he ended up on a world decimated by war. Now in regards to what could be happening here, if we look at the comics, there are some clues. Over time, a version of Kang rose up called Prime Kang, who started eliminating timelines that the other versions of Kang came from. This annoyed some of them, started some infighting, and basically it led to the Avengers stopping Kang whilst he had all this other stuff to deal with. It built to a battle between Prime Kang and the last other remaining Kang, and that one died when trying to kill Prime as the weapon he used backfired on him. This left Prime Kang as seemingly the last one on the council, however there was an extra twist. It turned out that Immortus was actually manipulating the entire thing, and that he'd created the council to bring everyone together to destroy them. He also created something known as the Cyclo, which brought together the memories of every different version of Kang that had ever existed. With this knowledge, Immortus intended to become the ruler of all time, and I think this might be something that's brought across to the MCU. Now the Skrull version is really interesting too, as we have Secret Invasion coming out in a couple of months. Potentially we'll see this variant of Kang in that series, though this might be something that they don't end up including. Either way, I think there's big things going to be happening with the character going forward into the future. Yeah, no shit. Either way, with Jonathan Majors being the best part of the movie by far, I can't wait to see what they cook up. The Council of Kangs has influenced several things, such as the Council of Ricks from Rick and Morty, and Reed Richards even had to create his own council in order to try and beat them. Lots of things that could happen, and let me know your thoughts below and where you think they're going to take things. We are running a competition right now and giving away the Rocky 4K box set to 3 subscribers on the 15th of March, and all you have to do to be win the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the movie. We pick the comments out random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at HeavySpoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out one of our trailer breakdowns on screen right now. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy 3, what else do you want, mate? Do you want The Flash? We've got that too, so definitely head over there right after this. Out of the way, thanks for clicking the video, I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.